Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. We're going deep today into the world of e-commerce psychology and
Mm,
getting inside the shopping brain. You ready to go there with me today?
let's do it.
So we're talking about fMRI. You've probably heard about it, functional magnetic resonance imaging. It's like we get to have X-ray vision for what's really going on when we're online shopping, when we browse, when we click, and yeah, when we buy.
fMRI is giving us some incredible data. It really lets us, see beyond those surface level responses. You know what I mean? Like when someone says, "Oh, I like this because of XYZ," we can actually observe, the activity in those deeper brain regions, the ones that are driving those unconscious decisions, especially when we're shopping online, those impulse buys.
Okay, so fMRI is not new, but applying it to online shopping, that's where things get really interesting. Are you telling me that we can actually see what makes someone click add to cart?
I mean, think about it this way. When a part of your brain is working hard, it needs more oxygen, right? So fMRI is tracking blood flow. So we can literally see which areas light up when someone's looking at a product image, or comparing prices, reading reviews, things like that. It's like we can map out the brain's decision-making process in real time.
Wow. So it's not just for medical stuff anymore.
No, definitely not. Marketers are realizing more and more that, understanding why people buy is just as important as what they buy. And fMRI is giving us that glimpse into those subconscious drivers. We're talking about decoding those buy now impulses.
Okay, now we're talking. So before we go too deep, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. How does fMRI compare to some of the other tools that marketers are using these days? We've got eye tracking, we've got surveys that pop up. How does this fit in?
Yeah, you're right. It's all part of a bigger toolkit. But imagine it this way. Eye tracking tells you where people look, surveys tell you what people say, but fMRI is revealing how they feel. It's
Got it.
that deep dive into the emotional centers of the brain and the motivational centers giving us insights that those traditional methods, the surveys, focus groups, they just often miss.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture here. So I'm picturing myself in one of those scanners, seeing my own brain light up as I'm scrolling through, my favorite online store.
It's kind of wild, right?
So what is actually happening in there when we're shopping online?
Right. So first, picture the striatum. It's a key part of your brain's reward system. It's all about anticipation and pleasure, like that dopamine rush we get, when we find an amazing deal or we see that limited time offer flashing. It's primal and it's powerful, and it's honestly driving a lot of our online shopping behavior.
Okay, that makes sense. But we're not just these impulsive
Yeah.
creatures. There's got to be some logic going on too, right?
Absolutely. Other areas like the MPFC, that's the medial prefrontal cortex that comes into play when we are weighing value and making choices. It's where we process information about price. We compare different options and ultimately decide, is this worth it?
So it's like this tug of war between that instant gratification and then our more rational side.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting. fMRI studies are showing that sometimes paying more can actually trigger a stronger response in those reward centers of the brain, especially if a product is, positioned as exclusive or high status.
So you're telling me that treat yourself mentality actually has a neurological basis.
It really does. It's called the price placebo effect. And it highlights how powerful perception and branding can be. Think about the classic Coke versus Pepsi study. When people knew they were drinking Coke, their brains lit up in areas associated with memory, emotion, self-image. Like the brand itself enhanced the experience.
Hold on. So you're saying that the brand can actually change how we experience something.
That's exactly what the research is suggesting. Our brains don't just process sensory information, what it tastes like, what it looks like. They layer it with our existing knowledge, our memories, our emotions, and that's what makes branding so potent.
Wow, this is all incredibly fascinating. But how does it translate to the real world of e-commerce? Are companies actually using fMRI to design products or to make marketing campaigns?
Absolutely. They are companies like Campbell's Soup Hyundai. Even PayPal have used fMRI insights to improve packaging, product design, even user experience. By understanding how the brain responds to different stimuli, they can create more engaging and persuasive experiences for their customers.
Give us some examples. What kind of changes are we talking about?
Sure. So Campbell's, they redesigned their soup labels based on fMRI data, creating visuals that evoked stronger emotional responses. Hyundai used it to understand how drivers interact with their cars, and it led to improvements in the design of their interiors. And then PayPal, they found that by simplifying their checkout process, it actually increased trust, and they could see that in the brain scans.
This podcast is powered by Growth Suite. Growth Suite helps you to run smart discount campaigns on your store. Test it for free on your Shopify store. Just land on the Shopify App Store now and test it for free.
It's pretty cool, right? We're moving from guesswork to data-driven decision-making, all thanks to this deeper understanding of the brain.
It's pretty amazing. But I have to ask, how practical is all of fMRI sounds incredibly expensive and complex. Is it really accessible to most e-commerce businesses, or is this just for the big players?
That's a great question. And it's true that fMRI does come with some real-world challenges. The cost is significant. We're talking thousands of dollars per participant just to get them in the scanner. And then you need specialized facilities, you need trained technicians, experts to analyze the data. It's a lot.
So not exactly something you can just, add to your marketing budget on a whim.
Right. And then there are methodological hurdles. Lying in a giant noisy tube isn't exactly how people usually shop online. And then interpreting the data, it's not always straightforward. Those colorful brain maps can be tempting to oversimplify. But the reality is that the brain is incredibly complex.
So it sounds like there's a lot of potential with fMRI, but also a need for caution and expertise. We need to use it responsibly and interpret those findings carefully. It's not a magic crystal ball, is it?
It's a powerful tool, but it's not about mind control or finding a buy button in the brain. It's about understanding the complex interplay of emotions, motivations, and those cognitive processes that drive our decisions. And that's where the real value lies. It's about uncovering those, hidden drivers, the things that influence us, even when we don't realize it.
Okay, so where do we go from here? Is fMRI going to be mainstream for every e-commerce business out there? Are we all going to have brain scanners, next to our laptops?
Well, maybe not quite yet, but the future of fMRI is really exciting. I mean, researchers are developing more portable scanners and faster imaging techniques, which could make it more accessible over time.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about this combining fMRI with AI? I've heard about that. Is that science fiction, or could this actually be a game changer?
It's definitely not science fiction. AI is already being used to analyze, that huge amount of data that fMRI generates, and algorithms, they can spot patterns that we as humans might miss and help us build these predictive models that link brain responses to actual purchasing behavior. It's pretty amazing.
So instead of just seeing which parts of the brain light up, we could actually predict how people are going to act.
That's the idea. Imagine the potential for personalized marketing tailoring messages based on someone's, neural profile. That's mind-boggling. And of course, it brings up some ethical questions, but the possibilities are incredible.
Yeah, for sure. So if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, okay, fMRI sounds really cool, but how could I actually use this? What advice would you give them?
First, I'd say it's important to know when fMRI is the right tool. If you're facing a really high-stakes decision like launching a major product or rebranding your whole company, then fMRI might offer those insights that traditional methods just can't. It's especially valuable when you need to understand those deep emotional responses that people might not even be aware of themselves.
So it's not for every marketing challenge?
Right. Think of it as part of a larger strategy. Don't throw out those surveys and focus groups just yet.
And I imagine finding the right research partners is crucial. There are probably a lot of companies out there that, claim to do neuromarketing. How do you know who to trust?
You've hit on a really key point. You need to look for firms with real scientific expertise. Don't be swayed by a fancy website. Ask about their research credentials, their publications, their experience with fMRI specifically.
So do your homework like with any, big investment.
Exactly. And then once you've found those right partners, you've got to make sure that you're designing valid studies. And that means careful sample selection, well-controlled stimuli, and enough statistical power to actually draw meaningful conclusions from the data.
It sounds like a lot to consider. So I think a big takeaway here is that fMRI offers this incredibly powerful lens to understand the consumer brain, but it's not a magic bullet.
Exactly. It's a tool that needs to be used responsibly and ethically. And remember, it's about understanding, not manipulating.
So no secret buy button in the brain.
Right. We can't control people's choices, and we shouldn't try to. And, as this technology evolves, I think that open dialogue and ethical guidelines are going to be more important than ever.
Now, before we wrap things up, I want to loop back to those ethical considerations we talked about, responsible use. But is there a risk that, these insights could be misused to exploit consumers?
Yeah, it's a valid concern. I think we need to be very mindful of those potential pitfalls as we explore the power of fMRI. That's why transparency and, ongoing dialogue about ethical applications are so important. Responsible researchers, they're very clear. There is no buy button. We're not trying to control minds, but rather understand how they work.
Okay, that's reassuring. This has been such an incredible deep dive, and it feels like we're just scratching the surface of what fMRI can tell us about why we buy.
Absolutely. What's really exciting is that we're just at the beginning of this journey, Think about the potential to optimize online stores, personalize recommendations, even predict trends, all based on those brain responses. It's amazing.
Okay, now my mind is really racing. What's your final thought for our listeners? What should they be thinking about as they navigate this new world of, e-commerce psychology?
I'd say embrace the possibilities, but stay grounded. fMRI offers this fascinating window into the consumer brain, but it's not a mind-reading solution. It's a powerful tool when it's used strategically, ethically, and alongside those other research methods. Don't forget about
And
those.
it sounds like the future of shopping is going to be shaped by these kinds of insights.
Oh, absolutely.
So stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking those important ethical questions.
Well said. And, who knows, maybe one day we'll all be getting our brains scanned before we hit add to cart. But for now, let's use this knowledge responsibly to create better experiences and, build stronger brands.
On that note, I want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today, and a huge thanks to all of you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure.
This podcast is powered by Growth Suite. Growth Suite helps you to run smart discount campaigns on your store. Test it for free on your Shopify store. Just land on the Shopify App Store now and test it for free. Until next time, keep exploring that fascinating world of e-commerce psychology.
Yeah, it really feels like we're, at the forefront of something big here. I mean, who would have thought we'd be talking about using brain scans to understand online shopping?
It's a testament to how much we're learning about the human brain and how those insights can be applied to, all sorts of fields, even e-commerce.
It's funny, we started this deep dive talking about those colorful brain maps, but what I'm taking away from this is how much we don't know. There's this
Yeah.
whole hidden world of subconscious processes that are driving our behavior.
Yeah, and that's what makes this field so exciting. We're constantly uncovering new layers of complexity, and, as we do, it raises new questions about how we use this knowledge responsibly. Absolutely. So, as we wrap up here, what's your final thought for our listeners? What should they be pondering as they, kind of explore this world of e-commerce psychology?
I would say stay curious and stay critical. fMRI is a powerful tool, but it's not a magic solution. Use it strategically, ethically, and remember it's all about understanding, that human element behind every click and purchase.
And never underestimate the power of the shopping brain. Thank you again so much for taking this deep dive with us.
My pleasure.
This podcast is powered by Growth Suite. Growth Suite helps you to run smart discount campaigns on your store. Test it for free on your Shopify store. Just land on the Shopify App Store now and test it for free. Until next time, keep exploring that fascinating world of e-commerce psychology.